This week in Texas, we talk about the border with Senator Ted Cruz.
They refuse to do the steps that are needed to actually secure the border.
And we look at the race for Congressional District 18 between longtime incumbent Sheila Jackson Lee and former Houston City Council member Amanda Edwards.
This race isn't about, me or anyone else who's vying for the seat. It's really about the people in this district.
I love this district. It is a district of neighborhoods.
Plus, we get an Election Day primer from our political insiders, Otis Evagaru and Court Kenning.
It is unprecedented, frankly, to have a governor as involved as he is. He is spending a lot of money.
It's a pre-Election Day focus this week in Texas. Hello again, and thanks for joining us. I'm Tom Abrams. This week in Texas, we begin with the border. It remains a key issue for Republican voters and is of rising concern among Democrats, according to recent polling. And this week, both President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump visited the Texas border with Mexico. Biden visited Brownsville on Thursday, and on the same day, Trump was in Eagle Pass. It's no surprise each criticized one another, President Biden taking issue with former President Trump, ordering Congress not to pass a bipartisan bill that advocates say would reduce the number of illegal crossings.
So instead of playing politics with the issue, why don't we just get together and get it done?
But this is a Joe Biden invasion, but it's allowing thousands and thousands of people to come in.
Trump suggesting that Biden could do more. According to ABC News, Homeland Security is removing 3.5 times as many people from the country each month now when compared to the Trump administration. Also, data from the federal government shows the number of unauthorized migrant crossings is down significantly compared to December. The legislation lawmakers negotiated might stem the tide of asylum seekers in the wake of the repeal of Title 42, a COVID-era emergency immigration policy which forced asylum seekers to do so outside the United States. We spoke about the possibility of a border deal with U.S. Senator Ted Cruz.
Well, unfortunately, there's not a deal in the Senate because Senate Democrats want an open border. They're unwilling to take the steps necessary to actually secure the border. And look, what is so infuriating about this crisis, we're seeing an absolute humanitarian crisis, a national security crisis, and it is man-made. It is deliberate. Joe Biden caused this crisis unilaterally. And he could solve this crisis unilaterally, but he's not willing to do so because the Democrats have decided these open borders benefit them politically. But I'll tell you, there's no state in the country that is bearing a greater portion of the price for that political decision than our state of Texas.
Now, is it Democrats or are Republicans at the same time preventing a deal from happening, given that there was one on the table? I know you voted against it. It didn't include elements of H.R. 2 you would have liked to have seen. But it did have a lot of what Republicans wanted. It was a bipartisan deal, and it didn't go anywhere.
So it was a terrible deal. It was a deal that would not have solved the problem. And in many ways, it would have made it worse. The deal on the face of it codified Joe Biden's open borders. The deal on the face of it codified catch and release. This crisis was caused because Joe Biden implemented catch and release. This was a terrible bill that would have made the problem worse. And the reason it was a terrible bill is because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats want this border crisis to happen. They look at the 9.6 million illegal immigrants who've crossed under Joe Biden, and they view every one of those as a future Democrat voter. And so they're willing, sadly, to cynically look away at the body bags, at the people who are being killed, at the people who are dying, at the children who are being abused, at the women who are being sexually assaulted. And we should have had a deal. Republicans should have stood strong and said, we will not provide the funding for Ukraine that the White House wants unless you are willing to secure our border. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in the Senate. And it was a terrible bill because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer, they want this open border politically, and they refuse to do the steps that are needed to actually secure the border.
Though the likely nominee, former President Donald Trump, said he didn't want the deal to go through and didn't want Republicans to vote for it because it would hurt him politically and hurt Republicans in the fall. Is everybody to blame then?
No. This is entirely the fault of the Democrats. So understand something, Tom. When Joe Biden came into office, He inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. He inherited incredible success. We had made incredible success securing the border. All Joe Biden had to do was nothing, just not screw it up. And we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. Biden made 3 decisions his very first week in office that caused this crisis. Number 1, he immediately halted construction of the border wall. Number 2, he reinstated the disastrous policy of catch and release. And number 3, he pulled out of the incredibly successful Remain in Mexico agreement. Those 3 decisions caused this crisis, and it was instantaneous. We went from the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years to the highest rate in the history of our country, and it happened instantaneously because of unilateral decisions from Joe Biden. Now, here's the good news. Biden caused this by making unilateral decisions to defy the law. It means he could fix this tomorrow by reversing those 3 decisions, by returning to building the wall, by ending catch and release, and by returning to the very successful Remain in Mexico agreement. Joe Biden and the Democrats don't want to do this because they want this invasion of Texas to keep unfolding.
So Title 42, ultimately, the courts decided that Title 42 couldn't stay in place after COVID, right?
No, that's actually completely inaccurate. It was Joe Biden that canceled it. The courts did not strike down Title 42. And to be clear, it wasn't Title 42 that caused the numbers to plummet. What caused the numbers to plummet was the Remain in Mexico agreement. The Remain in Mexico agreement is a very common sense agreement that President Trump negotiated with the government of Mexico, where Mexico agreed that illegal immigrants entering Mexico illegally, typically from Central or South America, that they would remain in Mexico while their U.S. asylum case proceeded. And it worked incredibly well. The numbers plummeted. That was what produced the success, and Joe Biden didn't want the success.
Our thanks to Senator Ted Cruz for joining us. We do want to clarify one of his assertions during the conversation. I mentioned that the courts decided Title 42, the COVID-era Remain in Mexico policy, could not stay in place. The senator corrected me and said that that was completely inaccurate. However, it is a fact that in 2021, the ACLU and other groups sued to end Title 42. In 2022, a U.S. District Court in D.C. ruled in their favor and ordered the Biden administration to end the policy. A month later, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the White House to keep it in place until it could hear arguments. At the same time, in another lawsuit, a U.S. District Judge in Louisiana ordered the Biden administration to keep it in place. The White House appealed. Ultimately, the Supreme Court decided to cancel arguments, and the administration lifted the emergency order Title 42 in May 2023. When we come back, we'll talk about the race for the 18th Congressional District in Texas. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee has served in Congress for going on 30 years. She is high profile and well known even outside of the 18th Congressional District she serves. But she recently lost the race for Houston mayor and only announced her re-election bid after the end of that campaign. She faces a challenger and former Houston City Council member Amanda Edwards. We spoke with both candidates this week, and we begin with Congresswoman Jackson Lee.
Well, I love this district. It is a district of neighborhoods. As a new member, my colleagues would always say, here she goes on the floor to talk about Houston, a city of neighborhoods. And as indicated, we're in Acres Home, represented 5th Ward, where Barbara Jordan and Mickey Leland grew up. Settergas, Cashmere, Sunnyside, I used to have that. South Park, 3rd Ward, Spring Branch, Humble, Atascocita. I used to have Jacinto City. But it really is a story of Houston, and there's more to do. This particular site that we're at, called the Bethune Empowerment Center, glad to work with our previous mayor, Mayor Turner, on the idea of an economic engine in a historic community, Acres Homes. We'll be building businesses here, growing farm products, if you will. That's using federal dollars and certainly using some of the funds from the pandemic. There are more problems to solve. I truly believe that we can be a crime-free community. We can lower crime rates. We can help build greater institutions of law enforcement by more federal dollars, partnershiping with law enforcement to solve backlog problems, because I am a senior member of the judiciary, 2nd in seniority, 3rd in seniority on judiciary, chair of the ranking member of the crime subcommittee, we directly help local police departments on backlogs and other problems that they may have. That's a problem I can help solve. Just like I helped solve when I first came to Congress, eliminating a grease processing plant in the middle of Spring Branch, using the federal authority. I think it is important to honor our neighbors. Here they are. I happen to be in Acres Home, they're in that area. It's good to honor them. It's good to honor my constituents wherever they might live. I do that. I interact with them in so many different ways. I'm known as the lady that gives out the turkeys every single year to our seniors. That means I've seen them for years. Some of them have passed, but I get to see them and get to hear about their concerns. For 25 years, going on 30, I'm told, I've hosted thousands of children at the George R. Brown for their annual Christmas party, not just a regular old give out gifts Christmas party, but the kind of party that has the library there, that has astronauts there, that has dental services there, that has a meal for them, that has a fire department there, the police department, exposes our children to the very best. So I believe the work is still not done, that the experience that I bring is not just the old hat of she's talking about experience and seniority. No, I'm talking about delivering. I'm talking about using that talent to deliver. And every year that I've been in the United States Congress, I prided in some major delivery to this particular city. And it's yesterday, it's today, and I count on delivering once reelected to the United States Congress. I count on delivering again, because we do need great things in this community. I don't in any way see the point that we don't need, but I will also stand up to anyone to say that we haven't been in the fight to make sure that you get what you need. And whatever generational age you're at, whether you're 5 years old, whether you're in the third grade that I just spoke through this week, Parker Elementary School, had a bunch of third graders that had me as their guests, or you are Gen Z, millenniums, whether you're working families, whether you are our seniors, you've got an issue that I can work on. I'm here to do it. You need my expertise and knowledge, but you also need the relationships that I have. And I've had every leadership member of the United States Congress endorse me. That is many times unusual. I've had more than a quarter of the members endorse me. I've had members on both sides of the aisle say, we don't want you going anywhere, when we were running before. And I hope I have constituents that believe that this is a job that I've done well and that I will do well again.
From the incumbent, Sheila Jackson Lee, we move to the challenger, Amanda Edwards. Why Congress?
Yes, absolutely. Well, right now, so many people in our community are tired of the gridlock, tired of the dysfunction. They want to see change. And one of the things I'm deeply passionate about doing is creating a community where every single person in it, no matter what part of town, no matter what their background, has the opportunity not just to get by or survive in the community. I'm seeking to make sure that they can thrive in this community. And by way of serving in the role of Congress, you have the opportunity not only to, of course, respond to constituent needs, but you also have the opportunity to really make transformative change that the community is looking for around issues like healthcare access, economic opportunity, infrastructure investment, and so many others like housing and the like. And those are the things that when I go around the district and I talk to residents, they want some of those meat and potatoes issues addressed.
So you were originally in this cycle running for mayor.
That's right.
Your current opponent got into the mayor's race. You got out and got into this race. Tell me about that thought process and why you switched races.
Absolutely. So I set out to run for mayor because I believed we could create a Houston where everybody would have the opportunity to thrive. And we were able to gain a lot of momentum in the mayor's race. However, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee decided that she wanted to come home and serve as Houston's next mayor. And I talked to people, deliberated over whether to stay in the race or make a pivot, and ultimately decided to make a pivot because I believed that we could still carry out that same core mission. Now, the boundaries are a little bit different with respect to the 18th Congressional District in the city of Houston, but ultimately the goal and the outcomes can result in the same, and that is to really give people that opportunity to thrive. That means you're not just responding to the challenges that we face. That's one thing you have to do, and I think in order to do that, you're going to have to bring a fresh approach, a new perspective, new solutions to the table, because some of these challenges have been lingering on and on and on. But separate from that, I think the other part of this job requires the leadership to have a real proactive vision for where we're heading. And what you're hearing people say is missing, and what they're encountering as something that's as a gap in our community right now is that vision for their future. You're not hearing that conversation really emerge. It's kind of reactionary, respond to the issue of the day, but it's not, there's no proactive vision of where we ought to be, where we can be, and then putting policy into place in order to get there. And so I think that this is a really important time in our nation's trajectory. We're facing a lot of gridlock, and no, I don't love the gridlock and the politics that we'll be encountering, but sometimes it's not about being in the spaces where you're most comfortable or where it's most convenient. It's about being in the space where you're most needed. And I think we need a fresh perspective, someone who's going to come in with new energy and, most importantly, focus on getting the results. That's what this is about, getting results that the people deserve. You know, sometimes we think about these seats and we think about them as belonging to an individual. And the truth of the matter is it doesn't belong to any individual. It belongs to the people of the 18th Congressional District. And so this race isn't about me or anyone else who's vying for the seat. It's really about the people in this district supporting the candidate that they believe can reflect their voices, but also deliver the results. That's the most important piece. And so sometimes you got to step outside of your comfort zone. You have to do something different in order to get something different. And that's what I'm asking voters to do this primary cycle, is to do something different. We're really thrilled to hear how close this race is, and we know that every single vote will matter. So don't think that this won't matter. Don't stay at home because this is not traditionally what you've done. We want people coming out, making their voice heard, and then of course that being reflected in voting, because that's how you affect change in your community.
When we come back, we sit down with our political insiders to get their takes on what to watch for on election night, March 5th. Welcome back to This Week in Texas. I'm joined now with our panel of political insiders, Court Kenning, Otis Evagaru. Thanks for joining us as always. Let's get right into it, and let's talk about Senate District 15. This was the seat held by John Whitmire for a really long time. Now there are a half dozen people who want the seat. What happens there?
Yeah, I think it's a third-person race right now between State Representative Jarvis Johnson, who just got the Houston Chronicle endorsement, against Molly Cook, who's an organizer in that area and ran in the election before, and then Todd Litton, who's a former congressional candidate himself in Congressional District 2 and ended up losing to Dan Crenshaw in 2018, I believe. I think it's a three-person race. When you look at their finance reports, they're raising money, they're getting endorsements from important constituencies. I think Mayor Whitmire probably stays out of the race and let the voters decide who's going to be the next senator from SD 15. The thing that's very fascinating, Court, in that is that, Governor Abbott, the filing deadline for the special election to replace Mayor Whitmire to fill out that term, the filing deadline is March 4th, the day right before March 5th. So it's going to be interesting to see everybody file for that special election. Then come March 5th at the end, all those folks drop out and it's left to whoever is left in the runoff.
This is a seat that was held by former Senator Whitmire, who was in office longer than probably Otis was alive, frankly.
True.
And he was the dean of the Senate, a very difficult person to replace in the Senate. I know he's probably involved in somewhat, and that's against the person who ran against him last time around in that race. This is going to be decided in the Democrat primary. It's over after the March primary in the Democrat side, so this is a heavily Democrat seat.
Let's take a wider picture at Republican races. Governor Greg Abbott has been heavily involved in endorsements across the state in various House races, particularly against incumbents who did not support his voucher plan. Your thoughts on what kind of impact the governor's involvement has?
Well, this is a one-issue thing for the governor. It is the single factor that he's looking for in endorsing candidates, nothing else. It is unprecedented, frankly, to have a governor as involved as he is. He is spending a lot of money, some of which is coming from other donors, going through his campaign and going out to the campaigns that he's supporting. $6 million check, in fact, just being reported. You'll get the next financial statements coming out, seeing where the rest of the money is going. But really, the underlying issue is here, what does he do after the primary is over with? Is he positioned himself maybe to be on the ticket with Donald Trump? That's a question yet to be answered.
Yeah, what's going on the Republican side is very fascinating. Think about how far we've come from September with the impeachment, right? We all thought that this primary would be somewhat of an indictment on how you voted in the impeachment for the articles to be presented to the Senate and how you voted in the Senate. Quite frankly, it's been more about vouchers. It's been about Governor Abbott spending this huge amount of money in these primaries. And we've talked about this on previous show. We thought that this would be a record number spending of money that's being dumped in the Republican primary, and we're seeing it out to play. In fact, we were just talking about a candidate who literally this last finance report that just came out, 99.8% of the funding that she's getting is coming from 4 different entities, and they're all pro-voucher. So it's been interesting to see what's happened on the Republican side. And to Court's point about what's going to happen after the primary, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays on the national landscape.
And he makes an excellent point. I mean, Paxton, who had the opportunity to do a mea culpa, instead did a mea coming after you. Yeah. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's going after those people that try to bounce him from office to bounce them from office. It's a very, very interesting time.
And we look at the statewide Republican dysfunction, for lack of a better term. Locally in Harris County, there's some Democrat dysfunction. You have an incumbent 2-term DA in Kim Ogg running against a challenger, well-funded challenger, who very well may win in Sean Tier, a former deputy of hers. Your thoughts about how that race plays out?
Yeah, we don't like to call it dysfunction on our side. We like to call it competition. You know,
okay,
there's healthy competition, progressive, healthy competition on the Democratic side. Listen, look, for the past 4 years, you've seen the polling, you've seen different things that have happened where Kim Ogg is the least liked county-wide elected that is representing in Harris County. And so what you're seeing is a strong, healthy challenge from Sean Tier, running more on progressive sides. You're seeing who's aligned with him when it comes to the finance reports, and then you see who's aligned with Kim Ogg in a Democratic primary. It's making it very tough for her. Things that Democrats and the ideals and what they stand for is not necessarily aligning with what the current district attorney has. So it's interesting. It's going to make for an interesting fight. I think election night is going to be interesting, and I probably think we might have a new district attorney Democratic nominee for the general in November.
And Tom, I would say this is just what primaries are all about. This happens every 2 years in the Republican and Democrat primaries. It's for the heart and soul of the party. The most difficult part afterwards is coming together. Right. And you know, the Democrats coming together, coalescing around their candidates that won. There's going to be a lot of wounds to heal going into November election. So this is a normal process. It's an abnormal time, and there's going to be a lot of sub-stories to all this.
Court Kenning, Otis Avogaro, thanks so much. And of course, you'll be with us on election night. We'll break down all the races as they come in and then have quick analysis afterwards. And This Week in Texas, we'll be right back. That does it for this episode of This Week in Texas. We appreciate you joining us. And as always, you can watch all of our previous episodes wherever you stream ABC 13 and on our website at abc13.com. Look for the This Week in Texas tab at the top of the homepage. Also, please join us Tuesday, March 5th from 7 to 9. We'll be streaming live election coverage with expert analysis after the polls close on Super Tuesday. For all of us here at ABC 13, have a great week, go vote, and be kind to one another.